The sun has gone down at Hangman's Hill, and the ghost at Misery Corner isn't walking tonight. So, welcome to the Weird Tales Radio Show, your weekly fix of ghost stories, urban myths, witchcraft, magic, and folklore. And now, here's your host, writer, award-winning journalist, best-selling author, and sometime werewolf hunter, Charles Christian.
Hello and welcome. My name's Charles Christian. I'm the host of the Weird Tales Radio Show. This is episode 73 on the 18th of July. With me is my co-host, Janie.
Hello. Nice to be here again.
Thank you for coming along, and thank you for tuning in and listening. And one of the topics we touch upon in this show on a fairly regular basis is urban myths and fake news and great hoaxes and conspiracy theories. And while a lot of people tend to think it's quite a novel new development, in fact, some of these hoaxes have been going on a long time. And here's Janie to talk about an old Scottish ghost hoax of about 250 years ago.
Actually, I heard about it, and I thought, was it the inspiration for Beyoncé's "If You Like It, You Should Have Put a Ring on It"? All will become clear.
Okay.
Right, so it's 1737 in Scotland, Aberdeenshire it's called, and he's called Geordie Watt. Anyway, he went to his minister, the church, with a very unusual problem. He apparently was being tormented by the ghost of his dead mother. The spirit, his dead mother, had informed him it was the will of the great God that he, Watt, should marry the family's serving girl, Tibby Mortimer. She's a cute name, isn't it, Tibby? As she was destined for eternal glory.
Ooh.
Yeah. Anyway, unless Watt agreed to this somewhat unequal match, because obviously he had dosh, he and his 6 brothers would be consumed with fire from heaven. I imagine somebody was going to torch the place, basically.
It just sounds like that, yes.
I'm just assuming. Anyway, so, hearing about this story, the minister said he'd visit Watt's farm. And he did. And the ghost duly appeared. And the minister, who was quite brave, he charged at it. And the ghost started to run away, but promptly fell over, which I think there's a clue there. Anyway, the church records, because it is all true, then noted that the minister, quote, made such a trial of the apparition as he thought agreeable to the principles of Christian revelation and true philosophy, which actually means he hit her with a stick.
Yes.
Quite a bit. Good old bashing.
That's the best way to deal with ghosts.
Yeah. Which is another clue, because obviously I think
Yes.
we know ghosts don't do it. Anyway, so he ascertained that she was no incorporeal spirit. Stripping away the ghost's veil, the minister revealed, yes, Tibby Mortimer herself.
Oh.
Not told mummy, come back to.
Yes.
Yep. And the records suggest that Mortimer was pregnant. The serving girl was pregnant. Aren't they all? That time. And both she and Watt were fined for fornication. So, God, you couldn't win in those days, could you? The church also found that Mortimer was guilty of blasphemy, which, yeah, fair cop.
Yeah.
On Sundays, her punishment was to sit at the front of the church service on the so-called stool of repentance, i.e. naughty corner.
Naughty step.
Naughty step, yeah. Wearing coarse sackcloth, a punishment that went on for over a year. There's no record of what became of the child, if there was one, but the sorry story does not seem to have ended in marriage. Mm-hmm. Anyway, this was written up by Martha McGill, at the University of Warwick for the BBC's History Extra website. So that sounds fascinating. Yes, there you
And
are.
there we got a handy little tip there. If faced with a ghost, hit it with a stick. What could
Yes.
possibly go wrong?
Well, knowing me, I probably sort of clumped myself on the head with it and knocked myself out as I swung it.
Thank you very much, JD.
You're welcome.
Time for another little foray into some practical magic. And for this episode, we're looking at how to make a simple good luck charm. Now, summer's here, certainly in the Northern Hemisphere. And for those of you going to the shore, the seaside, the coast, if you are on a shingly beach, as opposed to a soft sand beach, have a look out for stones with a natural hole in them. And these are called hagstones or witch stones or even holy stones. That's holy as in a hole in them as opposed to holy as in sacred. And it's said that with one of these stones, if you peer through it, you will be able to see an elemental, such as a fairy, an elf, an angel even, a demon. You'll be able to see them in their true form, whereas they would normally appear to be looking like a normal human. It's also said that if you peer through it, it will provide a little portal and you can see into the land of the Fae, into fairyland if you like. And they're also used as protection devices. They used to be very popular in rural places back in the days of horse-drawn transport, when horses were so important, because there was a belief that witches would ride the horses, take the horses from the stables at night and ride them and leave them sweating in the morning and unfit for work. In fact, it's the sweaty nature of the horses overnight is a veterinary condition, but in less enlightened times it was thought that they had been hag-ridden, and that was the cause of it. And so you would get people would find hagstones and string them all together and leave them in the stalls of the stables. And even today you'll see many houses have a string of hagstones by the front door to protect them against malevolent witches or evil spirits. So find yourself a hagstone. And I say it's most important you find it yourself. You lose the magic if you buy it or even if you are given it. Along with seashores, riverbeds can also be a useful place to find it. And actually, if you've got a long gravel drive or even a short gravel drive, you may actually find some hagstones among the gravel there. The second item you need is a steel or iron key. An old key will do. You've probably got one knocking around somewhere, ideally a latch key type key rather than a Yale type key. Any old key will do, but it needs to be iron or steel. And then you tie the two items together using, important, I'll tell you why, scarlet or crimson string or twine. So loop it round the hole in the hagstone and loop at the other end and tie it off round the hole in the key, where you would normally have the keychain fitting. And there you have your lucky charm. The hagstone will protect you against witches and warlocks and wizards wishing you ill intent, and the iron key is protection against elementals such as the Fae, who are renowned to be scared of iron because it was not a technology, according to folklore, that they had mastered. And so, what about the scarlet or crimson string? Well, this really is Jewish folklore, also crops up in the Kabbalah, and it's the you can find the full story in chapter 38 of Genesis. But essentially, you make a wristlet of thin scarlet or crimson string or twine and wear it on your left wrist, and it will ward off misfortune, will ward off attacks by the evil eye. You don't have to be Jewish to use it. So it's suggested that if you were making a charm like this, red string is the string you should use to tie the two elements together. However, because evil comes from the left-hand side, it's suggested you should wear it or carry it in your left side, so in a left pocket, or if you carry your shoulder bag over your left shoulder, put it in there. And so there you have it, a little double-edged good luck charm to fend off evil spirits and the evil eye. And good luck with that. And now for this week's interview, we're talking to Steve Higgins, a well-known UK-based blogger and writer on matters paranormal. And you can find his excellent website at Higgypop, that's Higgypop, higgypop.com. Hello, Steve.
Hello.
For people who don't know you, can you summarise the sort of services you offer? Because you're a paranormal writer and blogger, and you put up some very amusing YouTube videos about spells, and you also run some paranormal courses, I believe.
Yeah, it's a bit of something for everyone, I guess. But all sort of themed around the paranormal and the occult. So I've been running my website, higgypop.com, for, I don't know, 19 years now, something like that.
Whoa, that's a long time.
It is, yeah. And the last couple of years, it's become a full-time job. So that's where I focus all of my time and attention now. But I write about the paranormal, conspiracies, UFOs, witchcraft, the occult, all that kind of thing. So basically weird stuff that no one else talks about. Do a lot of paranormal television as well. So review paranormal TV shows and that kind of thing. And yeah, then alongside that, under the same umbrella, I run a YouTube channel, which is sort of mostly popular with children. It's kind of fun, made up potion videos in a similar style to my writing style, I guess. And then, as you say, yeah, then I also sell online courses, which is a kind of collection of the stuff I've written over the last few years and structured into a course that people can follow online and get a certificate at the end of it. Yeah.
And I suppose the starting point is what got you into this as an interest and now a vocation.
I suppose really it was Ghostbusters when I was a kid. That was the very first thing. I've just always loved stories of the paranormal and especially ghost stories and haunted places. And for as long as I remember, even before I sort of got into a kind of structured kind of way of paranormal investigation, even before I was, going down the kind of proper route of it, I'd still go and look around creepy buildings and go to places I shouldn't do just to see kind of places where there was a bit of haunted history.
Oh, wonderful. And what is your sort of home area?
I'm in Bristol. So I lived for 10 years in London, working in radio, actually, working in media. And I moved back to Bristol about 2.5 years ago. And that's when I really focused on doing the paranormal stuff.
Yeah.
So
was Bristol where you grew up?
Yeah, so Bristol's where I grew up. And obviously it's quite a historic city. We got quite a few haunted places here. So there's always been sort of ghostly things going on around me.
Oh, brilliant. Have you actually had a paranormal or supernatural encounter?
Well, no, not really. Um, I've been on a lot of paranormal investigations,
Yeah.
and I've seen a few odd things that I can't explain, but I'm not going to jump to the conclusion they're paranormal. Um, but I would describe myself as more of a skeptic, really, but a very open-minded skeptic because I really enjoy people's stories and experiences. And I think if someone has experienced something paranormal, then I have absolutely no right to tell them it was something else because, for all intents and purposes, they did see something they can't explain. They saw something paranormal. So I just like people's stories about the paranormal. And when I go to a haunted location, for me, it's as much about doing this investigation as it is going somewhere and seeing somewhere that has a haunted history. So if it's 30 East Drive in Pontefract, that's almost like kind of like visiting a movie set for me. You know, it's a historic place which ties in with the history of my interest. So it's a significant place in my world. So I find the places as interesting as I do the investigations, really.
What's the spookiest or scariest place you've been? You know, in terms of having the most atmosphere that.
I mean, there's one place that no one listening will know of, I'd imagine. It's an old World War II ammunition store, which is underground in Wiltshire. And there was always something about this one spot in this because it's an old stone quarry that's been converted into an ammunition depot.
Right, yeah.
And two people did die there when it was being used. A lift shaft fell and a cart rolled away and crushed someone. So there is a bit of a history of death there. But funnily enough, people that I've taken in there, and I've shown quite a lot of people around, they never pick up on anything creepy around the two spots where people died. But there's one place in that complex where, unprompted, they will always say, "Ooh, this has got a weird feel about it," and it does. There's just something psychologically odd about that place. And I thought I was brave enough to go in there on my own, and I did to take some photos one day. And because it's underground, there were sort of all these drips around me, and could hear water dripping in the distance. And then suddenly the drip changed. So rather than hitting the kind of stone floor, it sounded like suddenly it was hitting something hollow or plastic. And that was enough to absolutely scare the life out of me. And I ran out, and that's the only time I've run out of a haunted place. It's absolutely terrifying. And it was nothing.
Yeah, yeah. You say you take people on tours and things. Are you finding there's been a big increase in the interest in the paranormal in this country in recent years?
Yeah, I can only judge it from my own experience, but I think there's been a huge increase in recent years. I mean, the traffic on my website has gone up massively, and people are becoming more familiar with the kind of intricacies of ghost hunting as well. So it's becoming less of, for a lot of people, it seems to be becoming less of a passing interest and something they are genuinely reading up more about now. Um, Conversations kind of becoming more advanced and interesting around it. And yeah, the press just seem to be running more stories than ever as well. So more is competing with them to try and get people's clicks. But
Yeah.
and yeah, the amount of paranormal groups as well running events and ghost hunts just seems to skyrocket.
Tell us a bit more about the Paralearning Paranormal Academy. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that basically started because I was bored one Friday night and a competitor website popped up. So I thought I'd have a go at one of their ghost hunting courses. And they're quite expensive. They were about £120 or something. And one of the first bits of information on this course was that poltergeist meant pounding ghost, which it doesn't.
Yeah.
And so after spending all this money on this course, I just felt really disappointed. And there was clearly no real knowledge behind it, and they were charging a lot, and it was all wrong. So having written quite a lot over the last few years, I thought surely the wealth of writing I've done, I can put this together into a course. So the courses I've written tend to be that I try to make sure it's not preachy in any way, because my belief in the paranormal is completely different to someone else's beliefs, and no one's right. There's no experts. No one can say this is definitively what the paranormal is. So we try to reflect the current trends in paranormal and paranormal investigation more so. So it's kind of a snapshot of the current consensus of what the majority of paranormal investigators do when they go on a ghost hunt. And I think a lot of ghost hunting you can't learn anyway from a book or from a course. It's all about going out there and getting stuck in, really. But I know as someone, well, we've all done it. The first time you go on a ghost hunt, someone will say to you, "You call out," and you've always got that little bit of apprehension because you don't want to sound, it's a bit awkward calling out in front of people you don't know. Hello, is there anybody there? And you don't want to say the wrong thing. It's a confidence thing. So the idea of the course really is to give people the confidence to make that leap and go out and do the first one. So it's kind of giving them a bit of an overview of the basic equipment they'll probably see on the first event, and kind of an overview of what it does and what they should expect it to do. And then really it's up to them to go out there and give it a go.
Right, got you. Along with the paranormal course, you've also got one on demonology, and I think there's another one as well, isn't there?
There's demonology, and there's one from kind of an event management perspective. So it's more about the kind of what you'd expect on an organized ghost hunt event. So it kind of delves into event organization techniques as well. But the demonology one is, again, I've seen other courses online which are all about, they basically consist of huge lists of demon names and all their different names. But demons have been around for centuries, and they come from every single culture. And there's Christian, and there's Jewish and Islamic, and every single culture has its own kind of version of demons. But every kind of text I've seen about it online only talks about it from the Christian perspective. And I just find it odd that that's the only way. Because, what if a Jewish demon comes to haunt me? Can I use the Christian methods of demonology to repel that? And so again, I've tried to kind of normalize the information. And we're not saying here's a list of Christian demons or Jewish demons. We're saying these seem to be the traits of a demonic haunting, and these are the general ways you deal with it. So we kind of strip away the kind of religious and some of the more dated concepts and just bring it up to date and modernize it and tie it in with how a modern paranormal investigation works.
We see a lot of coverage of demonology or of demonic possession in the United States. What's the situation in the UK? I mean, some of the reports, it sounds suspiciously as if it's not demons, but it's poltergeists. In some, what's your take?
Well, this is why I find the whole thing very confusing because I mean, no one can know for sure, because we're told that a demon will pretend to be the spirit of a child, and it will try to make itself seem benign and friendly. But then we're also told that a malevolent spirit will pretend to be a demon in order to make itself seem more powerful. So it's, unless they kind of materialize in front of us and we can have an actual conversation with them, I don't think there's any way we could know really what we're dealing with. They might have demonic traits, they might have poltergeist traits, they might be a spirit pretending to be one of those two things. There's just a lot of crossover. So I think it's down to really down to just try and, if you find yourself in a situation where haunting is being responsive and you're getting taps in response or Ouija board responses, it's about getting as much information at that time as you can to try and determine whether what it is what it says it is.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I noticed from your course and reading on your website. You're making the distinction between interactive or responsive ghosts and the more residual haunting type that just, floats through the walls and floats away and is oblivious to its surroundings. Would you say that's a correct sort of summary?
Yeah, I think obviously that's again, it's just one kind of belief system, I suppose, in terms of paranormal. But yeah, residual and intelligent haunting does seem to be quite standard throughout the paranormal world. And like you say, a residual haunting could just be someone who's clairsentient picking up on a kind of emotional reflection of the past, um, or perhaps the sound of an animal making a noise that rode on that land hundreds of years ago, or the cries of a battle or something like that. So something which is just kind of history repeating itself, or someone's kind of emotional energy trapped in a space and repeating itself. Whereas an intelligent haunting is more like something that can answer with two knocks for yes and one for no. So something that can actually answer questions and perform tasks when asked to. So if they're asked to move something or knock on something, if they actually do that, which I'm starting to experience a bit on ghost hunts, and it's an interesting thing when you hear something that seems like a direct response.
I mean, that does seem to slightly cross over into seances and things as well, isn't it? I mean, the traditional, not once if you're there, not twice for no, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It does go back to Victorian times. The knocking, it is a very old. I mean, funnily enough, the two girls that did knocking for the first time and sort of became the first sort of celebrated and famous mediums, admitted they'd faked the whole thing after, but it seems once they got the ball rolling, it kept on rolling and seemed to become a valid method.
Yeah. What are you planning next with your projects? More of the same?
Yeah, I mean, we do. Last year we did the Paranormal Entertainment Awards just before Halloween, which they were huge last year. We got about 40,000 votes on the website with people picking their favorite kind of paranormal moments of the year. So paranormal hotspots, best television shows, best movies, that kind of stuff, all paranormal themed, best bloggers and things like that, podcasts, etc. So that's going to come back later in the year. Um, and I'm currently working on another course, which has been months of work so far because it's much more in depth than previous ones. It's a kind of more advanced scientific take on the paranormal, but it delves right down into sort of the theory of unified consciousness and quantum consciousness, and how electromagnetic fields affect paranormal investigations and what the EM spectrum actually is, and analysing waveforms and looking at the shape of waveforms. So it's quite a sort of technical course, which has been great fun to write, but it's quite deep and just very expansive. And then just kind of we've got content on the website every day. So there's me and a couple of other writers. So there's always content going up and the occasional YouTube video.
Yeah. And with your YouTube videos, which I say are very amusing, what's your favourite one of them that you've done?
I don't know. Yes, it has to be one of the weirder ones. There's one because a lot of the videos, it started as sort of a joke and it just gained momentum. But it's a nice little niche that no one else is really exploiting. And the great thing about it is I don't really need to think up the ideas because people in the comments will tell me what they want to see next. And one person commented once saying, "Can you make a potion that can make me lay eggs?" And I thought, yeah, why not? And I think that's the by far the weirdest one I've done. But because it is so weird, I really like it, and it worked well.
What's the most disgusting one you've done? I mean, some of the pictures look fairly gruesome on there.
I think probably the first one I did, which was a mermaid potion, was probably the most sort of gruesome because it contained lots of stuff that looked like blood and guts and not very nice stuff. But those were before I really understood who my audience were and the fact that it was a lot of kids watching. So
well, they like gory, don't they? Kids like
they
gory.
do, yeah. And at least by using lots of made-up ingredients, they're not going to actually try and replicate these things themselves at home. So it keeps them safe.
Lovely. Any other projects at all?
There's always projects on the go. I mean, a lot of it runs behind the scenes of the kind of main website, higgypop.com. So things like just trying to build a database of haunted locations is quite high on the agenda at the moment, and kind of ways to automatically pull in news reports about haunted places and weight them, so we can have kind of a real-time chart of where's haunted at the moment and what people are talking about in the haunted world. So lots of just kind of data crunching like that and seeing what we can make of what people are talking about.
Yeah, that would be very useful, because a lot of these newspaper reports, if you don't happen to see that paper, you don't know about it. But, regional papers.
Yeah. I mean, some places are kind of in favour, aren't they? Like, 30 East Drive can go through months of being the go-to place, but then somewhere else could only get sort of one mention in a year in one local paper, but that place could have had a kind of apparition caught on camera or something, which is much more significant than the 100 people saying they didn't have much happen at East Drive. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of making a sort of importance generator and working out which story is most important and which one actually holds some weight. And because you really want to reward that place that's had the apparition a lot more than the East Drive that's not had much happen, despite the fact it's being talked about more.
Well, thank you very much, Steve Higgins, for that. That was brilliant. Good luck with the projects as they go on in the future. Oh, yes, a couple of quick ones. Your YouTube channel, what's that, or is it best to Google it?
It's all Higgypop.
It's all Higgypop.
Yeah, if you go to higgypop.com, you can click on videos and you'll find the YouTube channel there. But basically, if you search for Higgypop on any social media, you'll find something from me.
Yep. And the Paranormal Entertainment Awards, when are you likely to be announcing them?
That will be announced in August and give people the chance to nominate people for the long list. Mm-hmm. And then the short list will be published in September. This might be completely wrong, actually. Can't remember how we did it last year. No, sorry, yeah. So the long list will be in October. So people will be invited to nominate someone to be on the long list in October. Yep. Then throughout November, people can vote on who they want to win. And then the beginning of December, we'll announce the winners for the year.
Right.
So that'll all be higgypop.com.
Yeah. And for people who don't want to go on your website every day, you do also do a weekly email newsletter, don't you, with latest stories?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you get a handful of stories in the newsletters and the latest video we've put on the site as well.
Yeah. That's brilliant.
Thanks, you too.
Once again, many thanks, and best of luck with the future.
You're listening to the Weird Tales radio show with Charles Christian. Something wicked this way comes. Weird Harvest Press presents Harvest Hymns, the sweet fruits and twisted roots of folk horror, a 2-volume set of books investigating the music of folk horror, featuring contributions from some of the biggest names in the field: Candia McCormack, Johnny Trunk, Maddie Pryor, Sharon Krause, Jim Jupp and Kemper Norton, to name just a few. Available now via lulu.com. 100% of all Weird Harvest Press profits are donated to wildlife charities.
Welcome, fool. You have come of your own free will to the appointed place. It is time to keep your appointment with the Wicker Man.
If you want to grow your business, save time using the latest tech, and look great online, Weird Appeal Digital can help. We have a free, yes, that's free, download listing 40 digital tools, apps and resources to help you grow your brand, promote your project, generate leads, and reach your audience. Just go to www.appeal.digital/weirdtales For smart, effective digital design and your free download, go to www.appeal.digital/weirdtales.
A listener contacted me the other day asking about what you do when someone's placed a curse or a spell on you. How do you send it back to them? How do you deal with it? Now, before we get into the art of reversing spells in our, this is practical magic we're talking about here, we need first to deal with a concept known as reciprocity. Now, the idea with reciprocity is, I suppose it's a version of Newton's law that for every action there is a reaction. So that if somebody throws a curse on you, then in return, if you like, cosmic karma will have an impact on them. And indeed, if you follow Wicca, you'll be familiar with the concept of the rule of three. So that if you curse somebody with some black magic spell, evil will descend upon you, or at least bad luck will descend upon you on a version of triple the amount that you've tried to impose on somebody else. And this is where, when you're dealing with somebody who's put a spell on you and you are the victim of a spell, you have to be cautious how you react. Otherwise you get yourself into a hexing war and you fire off a counter spell at your enemy. And that in turn brings down the cosmic karma, the reciprocity of 3 times the amount of harm you're trying to inflict on your enemy comes back on you. So what is frequently used by followers of witchcraft and magic, ritual magic, is the concept of a reversing spell, where basically you just send it back to the sender. It's as if they are firing a laser beam at you, and you put up a mirror and it reflects back on them. So you are not putting spells on them, you're merely bouncing back their spell on you. And they will suffer the consequences of whatever spell they've put on you. So here's a simple reversing spell to try. What you need is a small mirror, a black candle, and some reversing oil. Reversing oil is what you're going to use to anoint the candle. And you can make your own reversing oil by obtaining some olive oil, the purer the better, and heating it up with 1 or more of the following herbs and spices: sage, salt, eucalyptus if you can find it, lemon, something of that. You can find various recipes online for reversing oils, and you may even be able to find somewhere that sells them. But I say sage and salt boiled up in some olive oil will create a perfectly adequate reversing oil. So what do you do? Right. Well, first of all, you take the black candle and you cut off the top. That's the pointy bit where the wick's sticking out. And you turn the candle upside down and carve a new wick at the bottom. This is called butting the candle. And obviously there's a symbolism here. You are turning the candle around, reversing it. Next, you carve the name of the person, if you know that person, onto the candle. No, I'll just hasten to add, you obviously need a fairly substantial, thick candle. Sometimes they're called a week candle, as in 7 days. They last a long time. And if you know their name, you carve it on, but you carve it backwards. So if the person's name is Jim Jones, you would carve it Senojmij on the candle. If you don't know the person, but you just suspect someone's done it, carve my enemy. But once again, you write it the reverse way round. Carve that onto the candle. So when you've done that, next anoint your candle with the reversing oil. Oh, incidentally, when you're coming to carving your candle, you can use anything to carve it. It doesn't need to be a neat job, so don't worry about using knives, just something with a point on the end, say a nail that you would put into wood, or even a screw, or something of that nature will do it. Some point of pointer. So anoint the candle and then place the candle onto the mirror and light it. And I say, then once again, you're reflecting the curse or the hex, and burn it down, the candle that is. And when you've finished with it, scrape up the wax, take it off to a crossroads or somewhere in the woods where a couple of tracks meet, probably simpler, and bury it. So just to go over it again, turn the candle upside down, create a new wick, what would be the bottom, carve the name of the person or your enemy, but using it backwards, and burn it on a mirror, reflecting it back. So the symbolism all the way through is sending it back. It's suggested that you could actually do several burnings of the candle before disposal. It depends on the size of candle you've got. If you've got a big thick one, you could maybe do it several times. And that is a simple reversing spell that bounces back a spell that's being cast on you, but without you casting a spell on your enemy, and thereby risking invoking reciprocity and the law of three. And here's Janie back with us, and we're once again looking at our Dictionary of Ancient Magic Words and Spells. Now, one of the things, if you've ever studied folklore, you'll spot is that people were obsessed with love divination, finding out who they were going to marry, whether they were going to marry. And so it goes with these spells as well, as there's a lot of what nowadays would be called sex magic in here, with men and women seeking to find lovers and seeking to find, I suppose, sexual fulfillment.
Oh, tell me more.
Tell me more.
I'm
right.
agog.
You're agog. Right, well, here's one we start off. This is to win the love of a young woman. And you write the following words, Agna, Agila, Agilala, on a piece of parchment that you then use to jab her in the right jaw.
Ooh.
No, that's...
Is there a spell for winning the love of an older woman? Without the jabbing in the jaw bit?
Well, let's see what we've got.
That's unfathomable again.
It is. I don't quite see the...
It made an impression anyway.
Made an impression. Maybe it's a sort of
your fist in your face.
Equivalent of cavemen supposedly whacking people over the head.
Course. Yeah, true. Yeah. Well, like a man to be a man, but that's going too far.
Yes.
Or way too far.
Well, exactly. And here's another one that goes a bit way too far. To make a woman lift up her dress.
Oh, just steady on.
Exactly. You write the following words: Labon, Dolon, Assos, Lucifer, Lucis, Lucatans. And then presumably, I don't know, hit her in the face with it. All right then. You smooth talker.
Don't try this at home, folks.
Exactly. And then another point which really we tend to forget about, but back in the olden days, men's trousers were laced up, as we didn't have buttons and zippers and the likes. So there's a few spells for helping that along. If you say the word avigatat, I can't say it, avigazitor, Avigazitor, avigazitor. This will undo the laces of breeches.
What? On their own? They just sort of unravel. So
Yes.
you could walk down the road and you could chant that.
Well,
and people's trousers would fall down.
It seems to be that, yes.
Cool.
Yes, you have to write it on a piece of parchment before sunrise and then head off for the day.
Yeah.
Avigator. Ho, look at his trousers falling down. And there's another a rather peculiar one. This is a special spell to counter the knotting of breeches laces, which prevents couples from enjoying sexual relations.
They're fumbling.
They're fumbling and you can't get the trousers down. And this again is one where you think there must have been an easier way. You first of all recite the Apostles' Creed.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Then on 3 pieces of paper, so you write it down 3 separate times.
Is it very long? The Apostles' Creed.
I don't know.
Okay.
The Christ was born, the Christ was crucified, the Christ was resurrected and delivered Adam and Eve from bondage. Lord Jesus Christ, our God, Son and Word of the living God, crush and break the shackles and bonds holding your servant. And then you mention your name and say amen. You write that down 3 times. And the first page, you then put the paper in water so that the ink floats off it.
Okay.
And the 2 of you, the girl and the boy, whatever, drink that liquid. The second piece, the male puts by his right thigh, and the third one is placed under the couple's pillow. I can't help think.
Passion's gone by then, isn't it?
It's gonna
Really?
be
You just
gone.
go, let's go and have a cup of tea, shall we?
I think so.
A
It's a
Kit
little-
Kat, maybe. Actually, sounds like a far better idea.
Yes, trust me, a cup of tea and a Kit Kat solves most things round here.
Yes. And these are true. Just refresh my memory.
These are
You're
true.
not making these up.
No, these are true in that people have written them down and said this
Right.
is a spell for
Okay.
curing this particular problem. Now, I've got a couple of weird ones now. Seriously weird. What do you do if you're plagued by barking dogs?
Generally, you shout like a fisherwoman, shut up! And it never works.
No,
Have you noticed that?
it's true. Well, there is a magical spell for this.
Right. I'll definitely write this one down.
Okay. If a man approaches a dog that's barking, he should hold his left testicle in his hand. I'm not sure whether this is the dog or
His, yes,
Yes.
yeah, assuming it's
and
male.
then should spin around while saying the words terra, fara, gara, and the dog won't bark.
What if it's a female dog? I'm just
Yes.
playing with you now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
like
think
that
the
one,
dog
actually.
probably wouldn't bark because it would be so astonished at the sight of.
You win either way, don't you?
Yeah.
It's either just about to savage your hand off as you've got hold of his testicle, or it's looking at you and thinking, WTF?
Yes. And now, these were also less enlightened times, and it was feared that dwarves could transmit illnesses.
Well, that's awful.
Yes,
But they were awful times, weren't they?
they were indeed. And so if you saw a dwarf, you would say the words Abra Jesus, Alabra Jesus, Galabra Jesus. And the dwarf wouldn't spread illness. I'm guessing the dwarf would also scratch his head.
I think, what are these tall people like? Brainless.
And for our final one here, I want you to try this one. It was believed in the 17th century that if you wrote the following phrase and carried it about with you, it would render you invisible. And the phrase is alga altum ibra gramma. So try that one.
I've just said it very quietly. Can you see me now?
No, where have you gone? It's worked.
Right, I'm going to go down to your wardrobe and chuck out all those shirts that you've got I hate. You won't even see me. Ha ha.
Thank you very much, Janie.
I'll go now then.
We better come back first. We can see you.
I'm not here.
And that's it. We're out of time. Thank you very much for being with us for the last hour, and we hope you'll join us again next week. Until then, however, it's myself, Charles Christian, and my co-host, JD, saying good night from the Weird Tales radio show. Here's one final thought before we go. It's an old Scottish saying. From witches and wizards and long-tailed buzzards and creeping things that go in hedge bottoms, may your gods and goddesses deliver you. Stay well, stay weird. Good night.
Black Shuck, the demon dog of East Anglia, is baying at the moon, which means it's time for us to go. You've been listening to the Weird Tales radio show with Charles Christian, your weekly fix of ghost stories, urban myths, witchcraft, magic and folklore. You can keep in touch with us online at www.weirdtalesradio.com, by email to weirdtales@icloud.com, and on Twitter @urbanfantasist. Join us again next week for another edition of the Weird Tales radio show. Good night.
This podcast is a part of Straight Up Strange Productions. Discover more shows like this one at straightupstrange.com.